Look at those people. Fucking bunch of pigs. You'd be doing the same thing, McVree said. He waved and smiled, saving the biggest, flashiest part of the smile for the grandmother. The hell I would. Sit there and eat while a bunch of starving, hardly starving, Ray. It just feels that way. Hungry then. Mind over matter, McVree's incanted. To hell with you. You just don't want to admit it. Those people, they're animals. They want to see someone's brains on the road. That's why they turn out. They'd just as soon see yours. That isn't the point, McVree said calmly. Sure, they're animals. You think you just found out a new principle? Sometimes I wonder just how naive you really are. The French lords and ladies used to screw after the guillotinings. The old Romans used to stuff each other during the gladiatorial matches. That's entertainment, Garrity. It's nothing new. He laughed again. Garrity stared at him, fascinated. Death is great for the appetites, McVree said. How about those two girls in Gribble? They wanted to see what screwing a dead man felt like. Now for something completely new and different. It's the same with anybody. It doesn't matter if they're eating or drinking or sitting on their cans. They like it better. They feel it and taste it better because they're watching dead men. But even that's not the real point of this little expedition, Garrity. The point is, they're the smart ones. They're not getting thrown to the lions. They're not staggering along and hoping they won't have to take a shit with 2 warnings against them. You're dumb, Garrity. You and me and Pearson and Barkovich and Stebbins, we're all dumb. Scram's dumb because he thinks he understands and he doesn't. Olson's dumb because he understood too much too late. They're animals, all right. But why are you so goddamn sure that makes us human beings?
Dude, I'm so pissed off. I set up this whole arm, this microphone arm thing just for the microphone to not work. Hold on. Actually, hold on. I'm so bad about this. Over the years, I've bought not 1, not 2, but 3 Blue Yetis. The third one I think I just threw away eventually because it was pissing me off so much. I bought 3 microphones and they all just stopped working after a year. And it's am I supposed to buy a new one every year to record stuff? I could scream. I won't scream, but I could. Okay, anyway, we're talking about a book or something. I don't know. If you couldn't tell from the energy I'm bringing in, I did not like The Long Walk movie. I actually have a script over here that I'm trying to follow, but I'm just so full of rage. I'm so full of rage today, I guess. Hey, that movie wasn't for me, and I mean that in the most specific kind of way. This is definitely a personal issue. I want to make that super clear from the start. I think this film really works best for people who, 1, aren't a fan of the novel, 2, aren't insane about the novel, and 3, like adaptations in general. I read the novel, I loved the novel, and I hate adaptations. So it was 3 strikes from the beginning. From the moment the movie got announced, I'm God damn it. I knew I was gonna hate it. And that's kind of the issue too. It's when you go into something with the feeling of that you're not gonna like it, you're not gonna like it, you know? That's part of what happened. But the bigger part to me is we all have that one book or movie or TV show or video game that comes into your life at exactly the right time, and it just hits right. For my little brother, that piece of media is the film Akira. That movie means a lot to him. For me, I can think of 3 books that kind of fit into that category for me. The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls, The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, and then The Long Walk. I read this book in high school and it was everything. It was perfection. So at the time I was reading softer books, I had gotten into the Divergent series at the time. I read some Harry Potter, I read Twilight because everyone read Twilight. And then on the side, I guess I read like some like sad gay books. There was like this really kind of like melancholy queer romance novel I found in school, and it was like these two sad lesbian teenagers, and I think I liked it, but I couldn't tell you anything about it, so maybe I didn't like it that much. So when I found The Long Walk, it was maybe the first book to like grab me by the balls. I'm trying not to overhype it too much, but I can't not hype it for what it was for me at the time. Having only read shitty books, it was such a page turner. It was so monumental that I was in Spanish class. I was in Spanish 1. I had Miss Nagorny, and this book was so fucking good, guys. This book was so fucking good that I was reading it in class. Like okay, so this isn't the book, actually. This is a different book. But the way the book was, it was 4 novels smashed into one book. It was called the Bachman books. That's how I found it. And it was like this big. Like the book, this is not the Bachman book. This is a different Stephen King book, but it's like about the same size. Propped up on my lap, under my desk, in class, like trying to be subtle. Like I was reading this book, but like trying to like, you know, look at the teacher, then read the book, then look at the teacher, and then read the book. And it was so obvious that I was like not actually paying attention because I was like so engaged in the book. Like I was so locked in on this novel that the teacher, she caught me and she made me like take the walk of shame in class. Like I had to walk to the front of the class and put my big ass, dumb, giant book on her desk. And I couldn't get it back until the end of the day. Like, not the end of the class period, but like the end of the school day. And I was so mad because you're gonna punish me for reading? It's so cringe, but like that's the level of chokehold this novel had on me. Everyone is miserable. The tone is palatable. You can taste the misery in the air. The dialogue is tight and concise, and every sentence packs so much. It's really such a less is more kind of novel where most of the time the sentences are kind of short and compact and they just like tell you what they need to tell you. It oscillates between like, you know, long, slow passages and then these tight, punchy sentences. I've never read Moby Dick, but from what I understand, Moby Dick is well known for having a similar structure. Well, you'll have these like chapters and chapters and chapters where nothing happens and it's just, you know, the big open ocean and it's just kind of these long, slow, open sea descriptions. And then a whale shows up and everything is crazy and high energy and everything's fast and chaotic and messy and stressful. And then the whale goes away and it's back to being kind of slow and meandering and casual. And there are these shifts between, you know, nothing happening and then something big happening and then nothing happening. King is such a master of language that even when things are making those big shifts, it's done in a very skillful way. The horror is there all throughout. You never feel safe while reading it. The anticipation is so important in that book, where it almost feels like its own character. Like the anticipation, the waiting for the other shoe to drop, the agony of uncertainty. It's so prevalent and so big. The characters are complex and haunted and problematic, and they're not well. They're like, their worldview is so fractured and broken and depressing. Everyone sucks in this book. Everyone is bad. No one is pure. Everyone makes mistakes. It's not really framed that way. It's not really framed like this guy is bad, you should dislike him. I don't know. It's so unique. It's so unique. No one is good. Everyone is just surviving. It's so good that it changed me as a young person, as a young writer. The way I felt about this book, the way I like was so grabbed by it. Like it changed the way I thought about writing, the way I thought about characters and dialogue, and the way I thought about introspection. It changed how I wrote as a writer. It changed how I thought. It changed so much for me in such a positive way that you get what I mean when I say that no movie could ever capture that. The movie could have been the best adaptation ever, and I still wouldn't have liked it because it wasn't the novel. The movie could have been great, but the movie would have never captured that feeling of reading the first good book I've ever read, possibly ever. Plus, like, I just don't like adaptations of things in general. A movie gets like, you know, like we have Shrek 5 coming out, or The Simpsons 2 coming out, or Freaky Friday Part 2 20 years after the first one. Like, I don't have any interest in any of those.
You know, if something is liked, it means it can be monetized thoroughly until you fucking hate it.
I kind of tend to feel like these studios are re-releasing things from our childhood for nostalgia and, you know, for money. I don't think that's what The Long Walk movie is, mostly because the book was written in the 80s and most people don't know about it. I think I first read it in 2014. And when I went online to find like people who were like discussing it, there were like 3 people.
No kidding. When I would look this book up online to find people talking about it, I'd type in The Long Walk, and like almost always I'd get The Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela, which is not the same book at all.
I don't feel like this is an attempt to like cash in on anyone's nostalgia for a book that no one read. I do kind of feel like they chose to adapt a lesser known Stephen King property because people will turn out for his films because he's got name recognition.
Hollywood doesn't like to leave money on the table. They had to try and find ways to milk these properties for all they're worth. Get in there and start fucking tugging on those udders till they fall off.
So like, I say all that shit about hating adaptations, but I really like some of my favorite things were adapted from other things. So I'm kind of being unfair when I say that. Like, I love the show The Boys, and that was a comic book first. But I get the feeling that if I read the comics first, I probably wouldn't like the show as much because the show and the comics are super different. That's a different story. What I'm trying to say is I recognize that I'm being unfair when I say I hate adaptations and and I'm being like so cruel. But it's just a book that means a lot to me. The Long Walk is my shit, bro. I fucking love that book. To the point where I was really hoping this movie wouldn't get made. The movie was tossed around for like a long time. They had George A. Romero signed on at one point and he kind of fell off. It was kind of in like development hell where it would get picked up and then kind of forgotten about and then picked up and then forgotten about. Not to mention, the book is really just about guys walking. Most of what occurs in the novel happens in the minds of the characters. It's a very introspective novel. It's about, you know, this young man and his place in the world and how he sees things. It's about disillusionment. It's about coming of age. It's about, you know, masculinity and the role of a man. It's like these really heady concepts. But now it's here. And I've been pushing it off and pushing it off. And I just didn't want to potentially ruin something that meant so much to me. It took me a whole month to get up the balls to go watch this thing. So was this movie as disappointing as I thought it'd be? I mean, kinda. I didn't like it. But being fair, I'm gonna go through in a way that separates the good from the petty from the bad. Because I acknowledge and I recognize that a lot of my complaints are just me being petty, but sometimes it's fun to be petty. And I feel like there are actual, real, genuine issues with this film. And there are also actual, genuine good things about this film that I do like. Not many, but a couple. A lot of people really seem to love this movie, and I love that for them. I do. That was never going to be my experience, but I am happy for those who were able to get that sense of enjoyment from this product. And there is that like little petty part of me that whenever something would happen on screen, I'd be like, well, actually, on page 234, Pete actually says, you know, like, the adaptation doesn't need to be one-to-one in order to be good or enjoyable. Up until now, I've been trying to be kind of vague to help with potential spoilers of the book or the movie. If you choose to keep watching, I'm going to assume you don't care about spoilers. So in this dark alternate version of America, every year a contest is held to see who can walk the farthest. Boys across the country send in their name and an application into like this lottery system, and 100 boys are chosen from that lottery to be participants in the competition. The boys start at the top of Maine and they walk down and they just keep walking, and the last man standing wins You have to stay at 4 miles per hour. If you drop below 4 miles per hour, you get a warning. You have 30 seconds to get up to 4 miles per hour to get back up to the right speed. If not, you get a second warning. If you fall again, if you fail to make the right speed again, you get a third warning. And if you fail a fourth time to reach that proper speed, you get shot, you get killed, you get domed, you get... The winner gets the prize. The prize is described as safety and security and untold riches, all your wildest dreams coming true. In the film, most of this is still the same. They went from 100 walkers to 50 walkers. 4 miles per hour becomes 3 miles per hour. And the prize is also called the wish sometimes. In the book, they're all teenage boys, whereas in the movie, the starting age is 18. All in all, I don't think any of these changes really matter. I think they're fine. On the whole, the thesis is death and the manhood and what it means to be a man and like what it means to die in service of something larger than yourself. If you couldn't tell, this is all an allegory for war. People speculate this novel was written directly in response to the Vietnam War, which is a very controversial war, of course. People to this day still kind of feel like, why the fuck were we over there? What were we fighting for? And this idea of young men dying for seemingly no reason, where you've got your squad buddies and you're all hanging out in the jungle, and the next thing you know, half your friends are dead all around you, and there's like no reason for it. You kind of see that with the lottery system. Vietnam was famous for having the birthday lotteries, where pretty much they pick a birthday on TV, and if that was your birthday, congrats, you're going to war, you know? As for the novel, the book follows 8 characters. Oh god, okay. Harkness, Pearson, Baker, Olsen, McGreeves, Ray himself, Scram. Oh gosh, there's one more. But 8 people is a lot to adapt into a movie. So 8 musketeers became 4 musketeers. And a lot of the characters that they cut from the film, they kind of like took traits from those characters and gave them to other characters. So the core 4, we have Garrity, McGreeves, Baker, and Olsen. This concept of teens in perilous situations as an allegory for American politics is not new. In the mid-2010s, dystopias featuring a cast of teenage characters were like all the rage for some reason. We had Divergent, we had Matched, Hunger Games, Uglies, Maze Runner. Like we had all these films. Books like Divergent kind of focused more on the romance, love triangles of the main characters. If you want to know more about this era of teen dystopia, Sarah Zed has a really good video about this era and where it came from and why it happened, so I'd recommend her video. It's super good. Okay, looking back on the film and its good things, I really liked Ray. The main character, Ray, was really well done in my opinion. He's really different from the novel, but I think it's interesting. He's like this really passionate guy who has a big heart and really cares for people around him. I have opinions on that change. At a surface level, I think it's fine. I think it's interesting. I'll also say, like everyone else is saying, the main characters, Garrity and McGreeves, like the actors who play them are doing a really good job expressing anguish outwardly, because again, the book is a lot more internal. They kind of have to find a way to make that internal misery external. Ray and Pete do a good job of showing that. I also like that Ray's motivation for joining this competition is a lot more concrete in the film. I have complicated feelings about that. I can see why they changed it, but let me stay on the good side. I will say his motivation in the novel is a lot more abstract. He doesn't really seem to know why he's doing this, and that kind of leads back into that feeling of going to war and dying for no reason, and you know, why did I sign up for this? Most of the other contestants are impoverished, so they see winning the prize as a means of escaping poverty. That never really seems to be Ray's issue in the book or in the movie. He seems pretty okay. Him and his mom seem to be doing fine. What drives him is, again, more unclear in a way that I really liked in the book, because it kind of shows that people are complicated and flawed and illogical, and we make bad choices and justify those bad choices to ourselves. But I can see that that would not translate well on screen. If you ask Ray, like, hey, what made you want to sign up? And he's like, I feel like that'd be really unsatisfying to viewers. I'm gonna hold that thought. This movie and book are a dystopia. It is set in a world where the military pretty much takes over the country. The Major is basically the president. There was a really nice, subtle allusion to that, to this dystopian world of authoritarianism and censorship. Early on, Ray mentions the author Albert Camus, and one of the other boys, who is meant to be like this smart, know-it-all, brainiac kind of guy, was like, I don't know who Albert Camus is. But then later on, we see that Camus is actually banned reading in this world. Camus and Nietzsche.
The challenge begins with how to pronounce his name.
And, you know, authors that are more thought-provoking are all banned books, so it would make sense that also would not have read Camus. And I like that one of the contestants gets sick. In the book, Stebbins stays healthy the whole time, and then he just kind of dies at the end out of like misery or depression or stress. The character Scram is the one who gets sick, and they changed that for the movie to give Stebbins more character and to give him more to do, pretty much. And that's it. That's all I got. That's all that I liked. That is the end of the positives. And now we're gonna get petty. Now we're gonna just Garrity gets dropped off by his mom, and he meets up with the fellow contestants. On the way to the starting line, they take his ID and they don't give it back because he's going to die most likely during this walk, so there's no reason for him to have an ID if he's just, you know, gonna die anyway. That's in the book too, but I do like seeing it on screen. That was kind of a little subtle foreshadowing for people who didn't know what was gonna happen. Once he gets to the main little hub area where all the other boys are, they start chit-chatting, and I think the issue of the audio really comes into play here. Some of the actors, you can't understand what the fuck they're saying. Here we have a part where Barkovich says something that is meant to be ostracizing or crass. I didn't hear it. So you kind of hear him say something, and then you see all the other boys' reactions to what he said, and they kind of make a face, so it's implied that it was like something inappropriate, but I didn't hear it. I watched this movie twice, and I didn't hear what the fuck he said. And that kind of happened over and over again for me. Olsen and Baker. Olsen has like this really weird, strong New York accent for some reason. It's just like bippity boppity, blah, 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 blah.
Oh, would you look at those four guys over there? They were sitting right behind us in Beauty and the Beast. Is that a coincidence or what?
Hard to decipher, and also his character is chewing gum through the movie. So he is talking through a mouthful of gum with this big thick accent, and I missed half his line. Like, no joke, I didn't understand half of what he said for the first half of the movie. Art Baker is supposed to be like this down-home country boy, which he was in the novel too, but the actor who plays Baker is from England, so it's a British guy doing an American Southern accent, which is fine normally. I couldn't understand him at times, and also he had this issue where he would put the emphasis on the wrong word like multiple times early on. Like, he would say a line, the line would be like, "Hey Barkovich, fuck you," but he'd say, "Hey Barkovich, fuck you." It just hit my ear wrong, and I'm like, didn't the director notice that that line didn't, like, could he like ADR that or maybe reshoot that? I just think if they would have just done a second take on some of those early lines, it could have helped a lot. I know they're walking, I don't know if they're using boom mics or lapel mics, but I just feel like a lot of the early dialogue got lost. The movie like needed subtitles, and I don't think that's great. So yeah, they're sitting at the starting line, the Major comes, he pulls up, and he gives a big speech. And I don't know why more people aren't put off by this, but the Major fucking loves balls. Like, every speech he gives, he mentions ball sacks in some way. Let them ball sacks hang in the wind, like the American flag in the breeze. Like, every big speech has a ball metaphor. And you know, I think I actually might love that for him. 10 out of 10, no notes. My next non-issue, this is me being petty. The numbers, the boys are sitting out and they get assigned a number for the long walk, like how marathon runners have a big number on their shirt. In the book, the numbers are alphabetical, so like Baker is 3, I think. Barkovich is like 6, because, you know, they're earlier in the alphabet. And then like McGree's is like 61 because M is further down the alphabet, you get what I'm saying? In the movie, it's not like that. The numbers are random, and I guess it makes sense because if it's a lottery system, we just kind of pick numbers out of a hat. So in a way, the numbers being random makes sense that they're not in alphabetical order, but it just made my brain itch. Again, a non-issue, but I'm just like, why are the numbers not alphabetical? Why are they out of order? What is this? It does not matter. It is a non-issue. I believe this in my heart. This means nothing. But the fact that McGree's is 23 and Garrity is 47 when G comes before M just made my brain unhappy. From there, everyone gets their number and then the competition just like starts. From the boys pulling up to the front line, getting their number, and starting the walk, it feels like 5 minutes. I think that's a problem. Some people praise the movie for kind of just jumping into things, like, you know, all killer, no filler, just going straight for the main event. The book, again, has such a big emphasis on anticipation, where we have Ray at the front line and he's like, his brain is going a mile a minute and he's just anxious, and we have pages and pages of him just like thinking about, like, you know, what if I cramp up? What if I die? What if I can't do it? You know, what if 5 years ago there was a kid who was so scared he just froze up and couldn't move and got shot right here, and what if that's gonna be me? The anxious thoughts and the waiting. I think that taking a moment to have the characters kind of sit in that anxiety and sit in that waiting, in that fear, could have been really good. And not having that kind of sucked. Sometimes you want a film that is kind of a fast pace, jump right in, no fat. I think a movie that's really good for that is the movie Whiplash. Every scene in that movie is very to the point. It's very clean cut, no extra, just very boom, 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 boom. There's like not a moment wasted in that movie. I think a movie that is literally about walking and being slow and being mindful and sitting in dread and in that fear and just sitting in that and being trapped in that. I don't think it would hurt to slow down a little. By the movie moving quickly, we lose things, actually. I think that people die way too abruptly, and I think it looks silly. The abruptness is the point, of course. Like, you know, the fact that anyone can die at any point, you know, people were just dropping like flies. Every death is so obviously telegraphed. There are points where someone's like, where's Perry? Like, as soon as they say that, he gets domed. The abruptness and the suddenness is lost by the fact that we see it coming every single time. I wasn't particularly moved by these deaths. I know people found them really hard-hitting and gut-punching, and people really liked them and they found them really effective, and I love that for you. Harkness's death, kind of silly. I found Olsen's death a little underwhelming. Art's death was the closest one to being really hard-hitting for me. Stebbins, I didn't really feel much there. Yeah, Stebbins kind of says, oh, hey, wow, Olsen doesn't look too good. Let's go check on Olsen. And then Olsen dies like 2 seconds later. I think just dying and being shot alone isn't enough to make this movie interesting for me, when I know that there's so much more that it could be. I'm gonna say of the book, maybe only like 15% of what was in the book got adapted to the film, and a lot that was left behind is stuff that I think really is what makes the story. I think the deaths were clearly adapted. You know, everyone who dies here dies in a similar way than they did in the book, but what makes their deaths really punchy in the novel is the fact that we know them very well. And it feels like for a movie about walking, we are really rushing to that finish line. Throughout the film, Ray and Pete, they break off and they whisper together, and they have this really secret conversation that no one else is supposed to hear. And I just, you know, I had a hard time buying into that, I guess, because they are surrounded by guys and there's a dude like 2 feet away from them. Like you can see he's like literally in frame the entire time as they're like talking. I thought the reason why Stebbins was in frame was because he was gonna like jump into their conversation because he overheard the whole thing because they're talking at normal volume. They have that same conversation in the novel, but everyone overhears it because, you know, they're all walking side by side. So when they have that chat, Stebbins and the others give their opinions on it, and it's hard to believe that people can't hear them because I'm looking at them. See, you know, it's a book, it's paper. I'm not visually looking at 10 guys on screen all around the 2 main characters. The Cosmonaut Variety Hour channel has a video about the Hobbit movies, and he made the same point. And that's kind of how I feel about this film. It's kind of funny to think that 2 people can have a conversation in broad daylight at full volume and no one else hears them. It's not like a continuity error. It's like the suspension of disbelief that you need to be able to look at 2 people talking loudly and pretend that no one else can hear them. Now we're going to get to a big, actual, real problem. I'm going to address what I see as the elephant in the room. Yeah, the ball sacks are dumb, and like, yeah, the numbers aren't in order, that's fine, that's not a big deal. But this, like, what I'm about to bring up is like actually what I see as a problem, and that is the race-blind casting. Anyone who knows Stephen King novels knows that he does not shy away from racism. In fact, I would say one of his critiques is that he's like almost a little too comfortable bringing up race in his works, from the attacks in Derry to the schizophrenic black lady in the Dark Tower series to the racism and hatred that John Coffey faces in The Green Mile. Like, you can't say that Stephen King doesn't care about race. And I really don't think it's for shock value. I think that he's mindful of racial horror. Like, racism is fucking horrifying. It's this deep, dark evil that exists in the world. And I think as a horror writer, he'd be remiss to pretend that one of the biggest, most awful evils of the world, bigotry, just like doesn't exist. The showrunners aren't quite there. So everyone in this book is pretty much white, and the people who are not white, we are told they are not white very explicitly. And one of the first people in the book who dies is a character named Ewing. Ewing wears the wrong shoes. The walkers are told, hey, you know, don't wear sneakers. Ewing wears them anyway, presumably because he is poor and he doesn't have any other shoes. He only has sneakers to wear for this competition. When he begins to get cramps while walking and everyone notices that he is cramping up and he is about to get shot, warning, warning, warning. He gets warned so many times, and everyone avoids him. Like, no one helps him out. No one tries to give him encouragement. They all avoid him. Everyone is staring at him in this gross fascination, like a car wreck. You can't look away. Garrity notices the darkness of his skin. Some kind of mention of the way the white shirt and the black skin. Another character is like, oh, he's so black, he's almost blue, like describing his skin color. So it's like race is there and it's noticeable and everyone sees it and no one's ignoring it. And as Ewing is walking and cramping and getting closer and closer to death, Barkovich says,
Blisters. He made it sound like Ewing's mother was a whore. What the hell can you expect from a dumb nigger? Now I ask you.
Which is horrifying. It's a horrible thing to say. It's a horrible thing to hear. It's intentional on Stephen King's part to implore this racial element of horror and of boys being mean to one another. Clean up until the end. That comes through here as a testament to the immaturity of the walkers. You know, they're young men and they're teens, they're not smart, they're dumb and they're mean and they're immature. But also the cruelty of the world, where this black character, one of the few black characters in the walk, gets racially bullied clean up until his death. Like, that's horror, that's horrifying. So compare that to how the scene happens in the film. Ewing still dies, but he just kind of has a seizure off screen, which says to me that this film does not want to touch race with a 10-foot pole. Really, this is a deliberate choice on the part of the filmmakers. And I don't see it as race blind as much as it is race utopic. Like, yes, this is a dystopian world. Yes, everything's falling apart. Yes, we are in this horrible, horrible regime of oppression and kids signing up to die for no reason. But we're not racist. Like, this assumption that in this world, racism is just like solved, I guess. We don't have that issue anymore, which, okay, I guess. The Great FD Signifier has a wonderful video about Black villains, and I think one of the main points of that essay is that there's a difference between Black characters and characters who are Black.
Essentially, a Black character is a character for whom their Blackness is intrinsic to their character and on some level shapes it. Maybe the story is greatly about race and thus they engage with Blackness explicitly in the story, or even if the story doesn't have a lot to say about race, the way the character acts, talks, dresses, etc. is intrinsically connected to the Black experience in some important or meaningful context for the film. Conversely, a character who just happens to be Black is the opposite. These are characters for whom their Blackness is kind of incidental and non-essential to the character. There may be some lip service to the acknowledgement that the character is Black, often in very cringe ways, but for the most part, their Blackness is not overly important to the character.
Killmonger, Smoke and Stack, Django, Miss Celie, those are all Black characters where their race is integral to who they are. They would not be the same character if you changed their race. Baker and McReese are not like that in this movie. Whether they're Black or white doesn't really change who they are. I think the movie is trying to imply, I don't know what they're actually trying to imply with the race change. I feel like making them Black makes them worse as characters. Optically speaking, if I may be frank, we kind of go from this merry band of misfits in the book to a white guy and his two Black friends who only exist to make him a better person, which I'm sure was not the intention of the film. I'm sure they probably didn't even notice. By making the main character white and the two side characters Black, we kind of have this hierarchy where the main character gets to have, you know, a backstory, and he gets to have a purpose, and he gets to have an arc, barely, okay, we'll get to there, we'll get there, where Art and McReese are they're kind of like magical Negroes. Unfortunately, they are kind of like these two guys who are just kind of happy-go-lucky, nice guys who make jokes and are friendly and they see the best in the world. They don't really have traits in this movie. Pete is nice and is a little snarky, but not very snarky. Art is nice, but he is naive and kind of silly and kind of dumb. He's religious. He loves his grandma. Like, these are really tropey Black stereotypes. When you make a character Black, you have to look at what that looks like. And here it looks like not good. It looks kind of bad. Not to mention that we are not spending, you know, hundreds and hundreds of pages with these characters in the film. We are spending like an hour and a half with them, and if they serve the role of, you know, come into the story and die, like that's kind of the purpose that most of these characters serve. They're kind of two-dimensional, but because Baker and McReese are Black now, they are now two-dimensional Black men, which we've been trying to get away from. The stereotype of Black men being these flat caricatures of dopey and silly, or, you know, wise Negro beyond his years. Like, they are here to help develop Ray and help him get better, but they never get to grow or be better themselves, because this film is fundamentally uninterested in them as people. Movies aren't the medium by which we know people, is kind of what I have come to conclude. I don't think people watch movies for deep character analyses of multiple characters. Maybe one, like maybe the main character of a film gets that, you know, deep analysis. But in The Long Walk, we have 9 characters, all of whom in the book are fully fledged, deep, flawed, complicated people. Whereas in the movie, they're all very shallow versions of their novel selves. They don't have much depth to them. It kind of depends on what kind of film this is. I would say the novel's structure is characters are a little more important than the world itself. The way the characters interact with one another, the way they speak, the way they talk, the way they move, the way they think. I think that is the driving factor of the novel. I don't think that is the driving factor of this film because these characters don't do much of that. They make jokes here and there, but they don't really have that level of weight, I guess, the weight of people, which I feel like you need for a film that is about a young man's final connections before death. I think that the connections themselves need the weight, which we don't have here. And I think this is really prevalent and best exemplified by the lack of backstory for Pete McGreeves. In the novel, again, we're with these characters for hundreds and hundreds of pages, so we get to see a lot of them and we get to hear a lot from them during this journey. Each time the scar is brought up, the scar that he has across his face, each time it's brought up, Pete would kind of change the subject or push it away, which we do get a bit of in the movie. When we finally hear the story of Pete's scar in the novel, it is this really complicated, intense, messy. It's a story about young love between Pete and his girlfriend that deteriorates, and the deterioration of their relationship is kind of emblematic of the darkness of the world that we're looking at. The Long Walk as a whole, as a novel, that darkness and deterioration is mirrored in Pete's story. I'm gonna summarize it here. Did I put trigger warnings in this? I maybe should do that. Okay, real quick, this video contains matters including but not limited to child abuse, underage sex, violence, death, blood, sexual assault, sexual abuse, racism, bigotry, sexism. Okay, did I put that earlier in the video before we get to this point? Pete falls in love with a girl named Priscilla. He's a young man in high school. They kind of run away together in the summertime. He lives in an all-male apartment complex. She lives in an all-female apartment complex. They all have a bunch of roommates. Because they're broke, they don't have money to like get a place together. So they're both kind of, you know, squatting in these like, you know, 10 guys, 1 bathroom type apartments. They both get a job in the same factory. Pete works on the top floor. His girlfriend works on the bottom floor. He used to kiss her fingers, you know, very cute, lovey-dovey stuff. While they're working together, it becomes very clear that Priscilla is a good worker and Pete is not. Priscilla begins making more money than Pete, and Priscilla begins to take that money and kind of stash it away, with the implication being that she plans on leaving Pete. Because they don't live together and because they are teenagers who want to sleep together, they have sex frequently at a drive-in, like a drive-in movie theater. They go there to hook up. Priscilla is making more money, she has more friends, and Pete feels like he can't provide for her in a way that is satisfactory to either of them. I think he says all he could offer is his cock, and she doesn't even want that. Like, she is very quickly becoming disinterested in him. Pete loses his job because he's not good at it. He gets fired, and he goes to Priscilla on a day where her apartment is empty and it's just her and him in this big empty apartment, and he asks Priscilla to marry him in this like really desperate attempt to win her back and to prove himself to her and to himself. He proposes to her right then and there, and she says no and pretty much breaks up with him. He, feeling deeply emasculated by the inability to prove himself as a man should, you know, financially, socially, physically, sexually, he attempts to force himself on her. He tries to take her to bed in this state of emotional turmoil and confusion and heartbreak and rage. But to get him away from her, she cuts him in the face with a letter opener, and he's on the ground like sobbing, begging for forgiveness, saying he's sorry. He cried like a baby. Priscilla says, "Get the fuck out," and he leaves, and they never talk again. That is how Pete got his scar in the book. In the movie, Pete says,
"All's my life I has to fight, nigga."
That is the extent. Like, compare that hefty, fucked up, dark, flawed, you know, horrible, upsetting story that would probably sour someone to someone like Pete, hearing that he's basically almost the rapist. After he gets kicked out, he is pretty much suicidal. He is heartbroken and feeling like a failure, so why not sign up for the long walk? He gets his scar in this really unsatisfying way in the movie because a character with that much baggage probably wouldn't play well for audiences. The point of this movie is to root for your guy. You're supposed to root for them to make it to the end. If you're rooting for a guy who tried to rape his girlfriend, in the novel he is very forward sexually with Garrity in a way that can be interpreted as, you know, flirtation or predation. Is he flirting because he likes him? Is he flirting to be an aggressor? Is he flirting to be, you know, to make him uncomfortable and get under his skin in like a toxic way? In the novel, when he says that line, "Keep on dancing with me and I'll never tire, you know, we can scrape our moon on the, we can scrape our shoes on the moon and hang upside down from the stars." He's a poet. He's so sweet and silly. He's so sweet and wholesome and sing-songy. In the book, he says that line and then he winks at Garrett. He like, it's a lot more intentional as a flirtation, as a proposition almost. That could be perceived as unpleasant and creepy and weird, and you might not want to see that on screen. Hi, I'm editing, so I'm wearing a different shirt. I don't think this interpretation of Pete being a predator towards Ray is the right interpretation or even the only interpretation. I think that it is one possibility. It's one of many ways that their interactions could be seen. You could kind of see them as Pete and Ray are totally in love. You could see it as Ray not liking Pete, but Pete liking Ray. You can see it in any number of ways. You can see it as Pete being an aggressor or being flirtatious in a way that Ray does not reciprocate. You could see it as Ray and Pete are both two guys dying and they will never have anyone else ever again, so they are latching on to one another in a way that neither of them would had they not been in this circumstance. They're each other's only option, but if they were back in their normal lives in the real world, this wouldn't happen. Also possible. There's the potential that Pete is just playing around with Ray for his own amusement. You know, he could just kind of be being a bully and flirting with him in this really aggressive, kind of pushy way as a way to get under his skin or to like just tease him. Personally, I have kind of seen it as another failure. This book is really big on the theme of failure, and I think that Ray's failure to grasp Pete's intentions and to fully comprehend what's happening here is another failure. We have Pete failing in his relationship with his girlfriend Priscilla. We have Gribble failing to sexually perform with that chick earlier in the book. You know, we have all these guys failing to win the race as they get picked off one by one. And I think people talking to Ray and Ray not understanding what they're saying, what's being implied with their words, and not fully grasping what you're saying is another failure on his part. And at some points, other characters get angry at him for like not picking up on what's happening. Like, how do you not see what's going on? And I think that frustration of not understanding himself and Pete is how I interpreted it. There is something going on. There is some kind of interest, sexual, romantic, something's happening here, but Ray can't fully understand it because, you know, he's young. He may have never done this before. He has a girlfriend. He's never really done this song and dance with a guy. And because the book is written from Ray's point of view, the fact that he doesn't fully understand. I'm not saying like he's dumb or anything. I'm not saying he's stupid, but I'm saying that there's a lot going on. The crowd is yelling, his feet hurt, he's gonna die, his friends are dying, and his best friend keeps flirting with him. It's just like one thing on top of another that adds to this layer, this cacophony in the character's head of confusion and being overwhelmed and failing. He propositions him. He offers sexual release. He offers sexual release, and Ray's answer is always wrong. He always says the wrong thing. He never really knows how to react, what to say, how to respond the right way. That's kind of how I've seen it. But the fact that you could possibly, potentially see it as Pete being predatory, whether or not that is the case here, we don't really know. And that's kind of the point, is that we'll never know what was being said fully. We don't know. But you could see it as Pete being pushy, and the thought that audiences might see one of their main characters being sexually forward in a way that was not reciprocated could be upsetting to them. So they just squashed that entirely and made them like bros. It's like, why make this novel into a movie if you're not interested in any of the things that the novel is doing? You don't want complicated characters, you don't want ambiguity, you don't want misery, you don't want sadness, you don't want these heavy conversations that the novel is having. This book was written almost 50 years ago, and people are still asking what the hell was going on with Pete and Ray. But the movie doesn't want that. It only wants people to walk and die, and this book is more than people just walking and dying. It's about, oh my God, it's about everything. There's so much more. I don't understand, why would you make this book into a movie if you don't care about anything that's happening in the book? It's like, I want an ice cream sundae, but I don't want any ice cream, and I don't want any sprinkles, and I don't want the cherry on top, and I don't want any chocolate syrup, but I want an ice cream sundae. That's what the movie feels like. It's like, I want to adapt The Long Walk, but I don't want any of the homosexual tension. I don't want these characters to be flawed. I don't want them to be complicated. I don't want them to be interesting. I don't want them to say the N-word. I don't want it to say the N-word just because. I want those parts because they're real and they're raw. And I feel like this movie has no realness to it. Okay, back to editing. And while some people might say, yeah, taking away all that shitty stuff is good because we don't want to see that, I think that could go back to a conversation on media literacy and how having a character who does bad things doesn't therefore reflect upon the writer or the viewer. It's okay to have bad characters. It's okay for a character to do bad things, because liking a character who does bad things doesn't therefore justify the behavior. And you can create a character who does evil things as a commentary on the nature of evil, because in a way, in a large way, books and movies and films and shows are a reflection of life. Having McRee's, act out in this way, this really horrifying way, is a reflection of the pressure put on men to perform in this way that leads them to break down and be harmful and toxic. Oh yeah, so compared to this deeply flawed, deeply complicated, very real, very commentary heavy portrayal, this very heavy character of McRee's in the novel, McRee's in the film is basically a magical Negro who has very little motivation beyond being a good guy. I'm here to bring more good to the world. I'm here to inspire everyone. I'm here to be loving and kind and, just... Webcam, low quality. Just for a quick note, McRee's is basically Jesus Christ in this movie. He is so innocent and so willing to forgive and so loving, and his heart is so big and he is so pure that he is like basically just Jesus Christ, and it is really not good. Just give Ray advice throughout the walk. That appears in the novel. Pete gives Ray advice in the novel, but it's not nearly as succinct. So McRee's sucks.
Be McRee's.
Why does he sound like this? He's from New Jersey. are the only black people you know from the South. You couldn't create a northern black guy. Like, what?
Art sucks. They both kind of fall into that same trap where Art is also friendly and kind and gentle in the novel. It's not to this level. This is absurd and silly to me. I'm so sorry if you like him.
Pete and Baker are basically the same character in this movie, and that is so crazy to me because Baker and Pete are so distinct in the novel. They're such different people. They are nothing alike in the book. Whereas in the movie, there were points where I looked away and I thought Baker was talking, but it was actually McReese, and vice versa, because their characters are so similar, and their delivery and their accents and their personalities are so similar that it's like they're basically the same person.
Collie Parker is a Native American stereotype. I know some people really like him. I've seen comments from people who are Native American themselves and they are here for that representation, and I'm not trying to take that away from you. If you like him, please keep liking him. I love that for you. I want you to have that. But his character as this like stoic warrior, I didn't like that. And Olsen, what the fuck are you saying, Olsen? Spit out your gum. I can't understand you. Ah! On the flip side, I can see why, if you're going to change Pete's race, wouldn't want to keep his storyline of being an almost rapist, because that also has a very dark place in American history where black men were persecuted and accused of being, you know, hypersexual monsters who can't control their urges. So I see that, but changing his race and his backstory, for what purpose? Like, this movie is not interested in its characters, and that makes me really upset. That's really annoying how disinterested this movie is in telling a story beyond just people getting shot. This racial indifference shown on behalf of the characters, this is meant to be a post-war America. I think the book kind of leans more towards an alternative history where parts of World War II happened in America, but the movie doesn't say that. They just say kind of like the Great War that took place 19 years ago. And whether it's a civil war or, you know, a world war, like the big war that took place in the 40s, the American Civil War and the Second World War both had pretty big racial components to them. You're telling me we had a whole war less than 20 years ago where race may or may not have played a part in said war, a war that killed some of the parents of the people on this very walk, and everyone here is just like chill, like everyone's fine. Teenage boys being cool about racism. Have you ever been in an Xbox lobby? Have you ever met a teenage boy? It's like they're giving them dark skin without anyone seeing it in the world or in the theater, like it both in universe and out of universe. We see them, but we don't see them, and I don't like that. Okay, that's enough of that, I guess. I mentioned this in passing a few times, but a big part of the novel is the sexual frustration of its characters. These are teenage boys who are walking to death, and most of them are coming to the realization that they will never see a boob ever again because they're gonna die on this walk. Frequently in the novel, they mention the sex, they look at pretty girls in the crowd, they talk about the sex they've had, which honestly sounds like a lie most of the time. I'm assuming most of these guys have probably never had sex. This is a really big part of the book. Ray had a childhood encounter with a neighbor boy who was also a child. They were both young boys. Ray and his childhood friend got caught, you know, kids playing doctor, you know what I'm saying, like kids being kids. Ray got caught doing this and he feels guilt and shame for having done it. One boy runs off and tries to fuck a girl in the crowd. They talk about jacking off frequently. One boy tells a story about how he found a tent where people were having an orgy and he like snuck into the tent and he joined them. Sex is a big part of the book. Sexual frustration, sexual identity. Pete flirts with Ray. Sexuality and sex in the face of death are a big part of the book. And I'm thinking the movie shied away from that too, because this movie is for cowards and they can't handle hard conversations.
A really good essay on masculinity and sex in The Long Walk is by this person, the book and movie guy. I watched his video after I shot mine. He brought up some points that I hadn't considered, so I would really recommend watching his video, and I think it's super good.
Ray's a teenage boy who thinks about sex a lot, but what's weird about The Long Walk is that the sex is almost never positive, and it is almost always linked in some way to dying.
Ray has a girlfriend in the novel, and he sees a pretty girl on the side of the road, and he fantasizes about this pretty girl he sees while walking, and then he feels guilty and shameful for like having mentally cheated on his girlfriend. This idea of sex as horror in a way that these young men view sex as salvation almost. This movie didn't touch that, it didn't go near that, it didn't bring that up. I really just think that this movie believes that the horror of walking to death is enough. For some people, it is. Some people watched the movie, watched these kids die, and felt satisfied. Ray's shame, Ray seeing a dead body as a kid and being horrified, Ray punching a child, Ray having complicated feelings for his friend, Ray both loving and hating his father for having done what he did with regards to being squatted, Grease having, you know, his backstory, Barkovich saying the N-word and being outwardly hostile. I think it's really funny that people like Barkovich, because when I was reading this book as a kid, I remember seeing Barkovich in my head as like this whiny, annoying, like classic bully, like kind of chubby. Like I kind of saw him in my head as like Eric Cartman. Like I think I read all his lines in Eric Cartman's voice. So to see him be like this like twinky blonde that everyone is like horny for is like really funny, because I can't relate, but okay. Stebbins is the major son. That is true in both the book and in the movie, but in the book we get a lot more with that. Stebbins was able to go to watch a long walk in person. He was able to go see one himself. The crowds of the long walk are really important, because as a kid, Stebbins got to see the way the crowds were losing their minds to see people, these two boys, dying in front of him. The final contestants of the long walk he saw, it was the home stretch. Everyone was watching to see what would happen. This one guy besides Stebbins was so excited by the death of these two boys that he either ejaculated or peed himself. We don't really know which would happen, but it just goes to show the frenzy that people have for this long walk. The community, the culture around the long walk is so intense. It's so integral to entertainment, finances. Stebbins sees the last two boys, one of them dies, and the other boy is so out of his mind after this long walk that he is talking to the boy, the dead boy, as if he's still alive, like talking to the corpse of his dead friend gone. And Stebbins tells that story to the walkers as they're walking, and everyone hates it, and they're like, hey, Stebbins, shut the fuck up. I don't want to hear that. I can't hear that right now.
Also, Stebbins' whole thing is that for the first, 100 pages or so, he doesn't say anything. He's very, he's silent. He's so quiet that none of the other boys know anything about him, and they all assume he's gonna die early because he's this quiet figure lurking in the back that no one knows anything about. So to make him basically the new Olsen who just regurgitates laws and facts, hey, you shouldn't do that, no, you shouldn't talk bad about the major, no, that's really boring. Which is interesting, because I think that between Olsen and Stebbins we get the most amount of lore about the world. Those two sharing facts about, the laws and the tips are the ways in which we learn about the world between those two characters. So I think they attempted to interject some world building with Olsen and Stebbins periodically just kind of saying facts. I think changing Stebbins from this enigmatic shadow figure to basically Ishimaru Kiyotaka from Danganronpa.
Ha! Truant! Instructions said 8 o'clock sharp! You have no excuse for your tardy—
this rule-following nerd is so disappointing and boring to me. Stebbins doesn't say anything at all for the first half of the book, and then when he finally talks, it's to say the most cryptic, mean shit ever. And it's so interesting. Yeah, I think Stebbins was really shafted here, and most people agree that he was really bad. And the intrigue that Ray had for him, Ray was really curious about what the hell this guy's deal is. There's no reason to be curious here, because he talks right away, and he's
not interesting. And Garrity is cool, he's fine. I said I liked him earlier. He is the one who goes to help Curly, and when Curly gets that Charlie horse, he goes to help save him and help get him back right. In the book, he doesn't do that. Everyone in the book sees Curly with the Charlie horse, and they're all so horrified and fascinated by this. Which is interesting because Garrity is the one who wants to kill the Major, and he's got this bloodlust to him. So why would the one with bloodlust be the one to help out the stranger? Shouldn't it be McReese? McReese being the one who wants to see the love and light and positivity in the world. Wouldn't it make more sense for McReese to be the one to intervene on behalf of Curly? I guess they're kind of saying, you know, you can be vengeful and kind, and you can be kind and also indifferent. I don't think that was the goal. I just think they didn't realize that they kind of mixed up these character traits for these two characters. I mean, maybe he just wants to kill the president. I mean, that's not so bad. I take it back. Garrity's fine, I get it. So that super secret, covert, shady conversation they were having, it's about the fact that Ray's dad was taken away by the squad. In the book, it's never really elaborated on. It's kind of left vague intentionally, and I think that was for the better because seeing it played out was really silly and really stupid. He gets squatted because Ray's dad is kind of outspoken in this world that's meant to be dystopian. You know, you gotta watch what you say. It's very, you know, burned books, banned books, no freedom of speech. Think of 1984 or Fahrenheit 451. Certain thoughts are bad, and if you get caught spreading dissent, you get taken away. It's a very powerful narrative piece. I just don't think it was done well in this film. Garrity's dad gets fucking executed right in front of him, and it's really stupid. And I laughed because this guy, like, not only did he get domed in front of his kid, which shouldn't be funny, right? The Major comes to his house. Like, the fucking president of the country comes to his house personally. Like, in what universe? Doesn't he have anything better to do with his time? Why is the president showing up for this pretty minor case of guy talking shit about the government? Ray's dad, William, is given the choice to either lie and say he will never speak down on the government again, or tell the truth and die. And he chooses to die, and that's really fucking stupid. What kind of dad, what kind of person, this guy who loves his wife, loves his kid, and is given the choice to stay with them. Ray speaks so fondly of his dad that his dad was like this loving, caring guy who read him books and showed him this other side of life before the war. And clearly the dad is presented as this very loving man. Like, just lie and say, no, I will never dissent again, and then dissent anyway. If it wasn't so silly, it would work. If it wasn't so... Also, the dialogue is really ropey here. Will you bow down to the flag? No, I will not, sir. I will stand for what I believe in. I think it's assuming that the audience would not be able to pick up on what's happening without it being spoken aloud. And it's like, what could be, you know, effective and subtle is spoken so directly to the audience that it feels like you're holding my hand and you don't trust me to be able to pick up that Ray's dissenting father got taken away because he said the wrong thing to the wrong person. It's essentially suicide by cop when you think about it. Looking your son in the eye as the bullet goes through your head is crazy work, especially when the alternative is never made clear to us as viewers. Like, if it was die or get sent to a work camp, or, you know, if the alternative to death was made clear to us, if you choose to live living in jail or something, like, that would make that scene more palatable. I feel like you can't have it both ways. You can either have William as this obsessive, distant father who chooses his beliefs over his family, or you have William as a loving family man who wants the best for them. Unless we're trying to say that Will killed himself to keep his family safe, he could just stay alive and not dissent, then wouldn't that also keep his family safe? Unless living implies something bad. But if the way it's presented to us is that if he chooses to live, he'll just go back to his normal life and everything's back to normal, why wouldn't he do that? I hate this movie. I think I might actually hate this movie. The long, desolate stretches of land where they're just walking, they work in the book because they're broken up. We'll have a long stretch of nothing, and then we'll hit a town that's full of people. The movie took out the crowds, and I think that was bad. I think the crowds of people preying on these children's downfall is really important and effective and helps set the tone of the universe that this movie takes place in, or this book, this movie, The Walk takes place in. I think there is a lot of lore that was shared to us via the people in the community in the novel. People would say, you know, they're placing bets on Ray, you know, Maine's own Ray, you better win this, I got money on you. It kind of shows that the economy of the world has some stake in The Long Walk. Like, it's kind of made clear that The Long Walk is a big deal in this world. Everyone is watching, everyone cares. It's like the Super Bowl of this universe. I just think it'd be so powerful if one of the kids, you know, falls or gets shot or dies, and then we cut to a bar full of people who are cheering for a kid dying. Like, that's the tone of the book, the lack of mercy. I think it would have been so powerful, and I'm really surprised that they didn't, you know, have these cuts to reactions from, if not physical crowds around the walkers, then like cutaways to people watching in their homes, people watching at bars, people having watch parties. Like, the predation and the voyeurism and the way people are cheering in this really heartless way is so important. They allude to it early. I think McReeves is like, oh, hey, it looks like we're on camera, but then nothing happened. Like, they mentioned they're being filmed, like the camera is pointed out, but then it's never mentioned again. Like, they never show what the viewer at home is seeing. The fact that there are no crowds, it feels like the filmmakers couldn't afford crowds. Even at the very end, we have a crowd there, but they are like this like black mass of umbrellas in the distance, and you don't see them, and it feels like they're not there, and the lack of people feels really weird. The interaction with the crowds and the walkers was really integral to the plot of the novel. At one point, a guy in the crowd throws food to the walkers and gets arrested for interfering with the walkers, but everyone gets to have these big slices of watermelon. They're all eating and they're all happy. But again, I see the issue here, because if you have people throwing watermelon to black people, that would be a big problem. So I get why they had to take that out, but they could have had him throw like corn. I don't know, he could have thrown some fucking corn. Throw some corn, dude, it's fine. The walkers kind of curse out the crowd at times. You know, they're flipping them off, saying fuck you guys, I hate you, whatever. At one point, a guy tries to fuck a girl in the crowd. He like sees this pretty girl. This girl wants to be railed by a walker because he is, again, famous in this world and also dying, and she wants to sleep with a dying man. Like, it's so heavy. Crowds having Ray's name on banners. We see like one banner in the movie, but in the book they're like everyone is cheering for Ray, and that adds to the pressure. It adds to that feeling of anxiety. It adds to that mental stress for Ray by not having those crowds, by not having people yell at him and say, how's your mom doing, Ray? Or, you know, just yelling shit at him constantly throughout the book. Added a layer. It's really interesting to see the way the boys in the novel go from being shy about the crowd and being kind of, you know, not wanting to look, a little shy, to being kind of feeling like celebrities. You know, people are coming out to see us, you know, kind of feeling a little cocky with it, to ultimately feeling, you know, y'all are here to watch me die. Like, they have that realization that the crowds are just vultures. And we get a little bit of that in the film where Pete and Ray have that conversation about, oh, this family, they're just a family. Pete being the one to say, oh no, they're just a family. That is so, it's so sweet and innocent in this way that is, it's so hopeful in a way that the novel is not. This is not a hopeful, cheerful, optimistic novel. And for the conceit of the film is like, oh, just live in the moment. Like, let's just take life one step at a time. Like, that is corny. It's corny, and it's a betrayal of the message of the novel, the bleakness, the misery, the uncertainty. On that note, I feel like the world building in this movie was really bad. There is a lot that could be explored here. there's an all boys walk? What if there was an all girls walk? What if the week before the long walk, the country got super hype the way the country does before a Super Bowl? We'll get really hyped, there's a lot of parties going on. What if there were like parties for the long walk? This idea of having backup candidates, you know, if someone drops out of the race last minute and a backup gets put in, what that looks like in terms of destiny or fate, the idea of Ray's father being squatted, you know, how did people find out that Ray's dad was, you know, a dissenter? Are people at these workplaces like spying on each other? Are people like turning one another in to the government for, you know, money or for bonus points at the job? Because of the censorship, what do books look like in this world? What do movies look like in this world? Are chapters missing from novels because of the censorship in place here? The economy, they keep saying the economy is so bad, the economy is so bad. Like, what does that look like in terms of, you know, shopping and food? Are the stores more empty? Like, there's a lot of world building that could be done here that isn't being done because I think the writers of the movie believe that just the horror of guys getting shot on the road is enough to carry the story. But I think for me, the real horror lies in the characters and the world. And the movie is not concerned with either of those things. The characters are flat and the world, something is not right here, clearly, but it's not explored in a way that is satisfying. The book mentions past winners. I think they mentioned past winners like once in the movie. I think they really could have really hammed that up with maybe the past walk winners being seen as heroes in this world for some reason. Like maybe the winner of the 2012 walk was some kid that everyone knows because he's like a hero in the mind of the people. I think the culture of this world could be really, really interesting. And these are questions that the writers of the movie are not interested in exploring, and I think that's really disappointing. The film was just not depressing enough for me, and I know that sounds strange, but all the characters kind of had to be this better version of themselves. You couldn't have this really complicated Pete, you couldn't have this really problematic Ray, you couldn't have this like really racist Barkovich, because audiences, when it comes to movies, they need a happy ending, they need very satisfying narratives, they need the good guy has to win, the bad guy has to lose, and they need their heroes to be likable. And Ray, I find Ray likable, but you could just as easily say, wow, Ray cheated on his girlfriend. I don't think movie producers can take that risk of you finding Ray too problematic. It's not a book with a happy ending, it's a bummer, and people don't like being bummed out at the movies. I think if the movie ended the way the book did, where the major wins, you know, the major survives, and the race goes on, and Ray goes crazy and, you know, loses his mind and goes off into the distance, never to be seen again, moviegoers would be unsatisfied, because movies are meant to make you feel good and be complete stories, complete cohesive stories. Movies is vague because I'm thinking more like Hollywood blockbuster kind of movies, like The Avengers. The book is so ambiguous in so many points, and I think the only way to make this movie work would be to make it less ambiguous world building wise, not character wise, but world building wise, and they didn't do that. So to me, it begs the question of like, why make this book into a movie in the first place? Don't make a movie about the long walk unless someone jacks off in their pants to dead boys. Don't make a movie about the long walk if you're not gonna be okay with some kid running off into the crowd and trying to stick his dick in a girl and then dying of blue balls 20 seconds later. Like, don't make a movie about the long walk if you're not gonna say the N-word. Like, making Barkovich vaguely homophobic instead of outwardly racist is a bad swap. It's a safe choice, but like, this book is not safe. Safety is not the point of horror, in my opinion. Especially, horror should not be safe. Horror is meant to make you think and be afraid. And what is more scary than, you know, the person you love betraying you in this really horrible way? Like, and trying to turn that into a happy movie is really insane to me. Happy, because again, people still die in the movie, but again, they're barely people, and then the good guy wins and then the major dies. So it's like, this book is not meant for a movie, especially not this movie. Maybe a series, like maybe like a 10-part, maybe not 10, maybe like a 5-part mini-series where half of the episode is spent on the world building and the other half is spent on the race. I don't know, I just feel like this movie was very disappointing. A lot of things that make the book good would actively make the film worse for audiences, which I see. A friend of mine who has not read the book and has no attachment to it, a friend who's not coming at it from the same place of intensity that I am, she described the movie in this way. If it's a movie about the characters, there's not enough character. If it's a movie about anticipation, there's not enough anticipation. If it's a movie about the themes, there's not enough themes by making the world building secondary and kind of unrealistic. So like, what's the point of this film? Is it just to sell, tickets to a Stephen King movie? And I agree with her. I think that she's right. There's just not enough here. So if you've never read the book and you don't know the depths of what this movie left out, I think it makes sense that the movie is getting high ratings. It's getting like 8s to 9s from viewers because horror of walking and getting shot is scary, but this movie could have been so much more. If I hadn't read the book, I'd probably give this movie like a 6 out of 10. Premise is interesting, but the execution is bad. But because I think they made some really rough, bad changes, I think I'd have to give the movie like a 3. 3, not for me. Okay, well, that's that. Thanks for watching, I guess. Bye.